Hello, my name is James. For more than 20 years, I was in the construction trades. I did everything from framing to patios and decks, fences, and even building workshops in garages. In fact, I built my own workshop from the ground up. My oldest daughter and her husband needed to have a gate replaced, so I thought I'd go out and show them how that's done. To start with, I've stretched a string line between two posts so I know exactly where I can insert a third one, the one that will actually operate the gate.
Okay, Will, you gotta dig this one.
We've got some old gate hardware to take off, and I think the previous people who put this on did it a little differently than what would be considered standard, but we'll take care of all that. Our primary focus here is to get this hole down to 24 inches in depth. A gate and even a fence are pretty easy projects for a homeowner to tackle. Probably the toughest thing is just the labor of digging all the holes. We're pretty lucky in this situation today. We only have one to put in. And there's my youngest daughter giving it a try, and this is my middle daughter, who you see occasionally in the shop. Probably not quite as often as my youngest daughter, but everybody's going to get a turn to dig this hole today. We've got to get this fence post here exposed because when the gate closes, it's going to close on this one. So I need half of this fence post available for me. I think we got that close enough to 24 inches. We'll go with that. So I'll need to reestablish the string line here in order to know exactly where this post goes. We want to keep it in a straight line with the existing ones. And that is my son-in-law there who is helping. I know the bright sun doesn't help us. Now we're just going to set this post in place, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that the post is level in two planes, and we'd also like for it to just touch that string line up high and down low. This way we know we have it perfectly in line with the existing posts and level all at the same time. You can pick up a bag of quick setting concrete at any home improvement store. And as a rough estimate, you can figure about one 60-pound bag per hole. Concrete has the highest strength when the mix is a little bit drier. If it's really runny and wet, it's not as strong. Of course, it's important to be thoroughly mixed. You don't want any dry, unmixed concrete in there. Although fences can be installed with one person, it's a whole lot more efficient to have one or two helpers. If somebody can hold the post in place and level at the same time while someone else puts the concrete all the way around it, it makes it very easy. It's important to evenly distribute the concrete around the hole. If you put it all on one side, it will shift the post over. And then taking a stick, a piece of rebar, or just about anything, you can compact the concrete down like this. Once that's done, we put in a little bit more concrete, and then I like to press it down with my foot. This is my daughter doing it actually, but do that all the way around. It kind of helps compact the concrete and makes that post very firm so that you can start work right away on it. You don't necessarily have to let it sit overnight. And one last thing that's good practice, if you form a little cone shape around the concrete, then you're not going to have a depression where the concrete is, so standing water in the yard isn't going to pool around the post and tend to rot it out. And if your hole wasn't too big and you've compacted it properly and stepped down on it, the post is remarkably firm. I can tell you here that she's looking up at a bird. My youngest daughter and my wife are obsessed with birds, always looking for them and photographing them.
I don't want any close up. I want some distant shot to see the hole.
And there's a quick shot of what we've got so far. We've cleared the area out and installed one post so that we can begin construction on that short section of fence and the gate. Now my daughters are going to start bringing back the wood for the project. I guess if they can get by those trees. This is your pretty standard 6-foot cedar fence, at least in our part of the country, that's what it is. And so we need 3 rails. It's a 3-rail system. And so we're just going to measure each rail, make a note of that measurement, and then cut the 3 rails to fit. And my son-in-law here is doing the bulk of the work since this is his project. And a wheelbarrow makes a fantastic sawhorse. That's really all I've ever used for small projects. Once the rails are cut, we'll just put them up in place. Here again is when it's sometimes handy to have an extra person to help you out. Of course, there's 3 of us. I guess there's probably more like 6 or 7 of us, so it's pretty simple for us. One thing to note, when putting in the nails here, this particular post is going to hold a gate. So I'm going to have to cut those rails off midway, right in the center of the post. So those nails are going to have to go on the left-hand side. Don't look now, but apparently she's a photobomber even outdoors. These cedar posts come 8 feet long at the home center, so we're going to have to cut a little bit of them off to get them down flush with the rail. The circular saw won't go all the way through, of course, so we'll just finish the cut up with the Sawzall. Okay, one more little preview here. Post and rails are in place. Now it's time to put some bracing in before we put the pickets on. We're going to put in a pair of diagonal braces, and this is going to prevent the gate from sagging in the long term. They could always be done after the pickets are up, but if you remember, it's a whole lot easier to put them in now before the pickets are in place.
It's close enough, right?
Just a single nail to tack them in place. They're really going to be thoroughly secured to the pickets the whole way across, and that's where they get the bulk of their strength. And we need the diagonal brace for the lower side as well. Same procedure. Basically hold it up in place, have someone from the other side or reach around and trace it exactly where you want it. And this really involves no measuring. You just take the traced piece over and cut it and bring it back, and it fits perfectly.
Push it back in. Okay. That's it. We're not relying on it.
I had her turn her head away for this shot, and not because there's any danger of a nail coming through, but because the nail gun blows a lot of cedar dust around, and I didn't want that getting around her safety glasses and into her eyes. So we're starting with one picket at each end of our run of fence here. We're getting it to the height that's needed, and we're going to securely fasten these. Then the next step is to run a string line across the top of both of these pickets, and then all the pickets in between will butt up even to the string line, and that'll give us a nice clean look across the top. The picket going in here is the picket that is establishing the line between the fixed portion of fence and the gate. So I'm putting it in flush with the post. On the left-hand side, the fence is fixed and rigid, and on the right-hand side is the swing open gate, where the braces are.
We also want to nail this all the way up too. There you go.
And so now we'll just go ahead and continue putting in pickets on the right side and take them all the way across.
Okay. Level out of the way.
I'm actually taking care to keep these pickets level because I think that looks best. But anytime you do some work in an area where there's an existing fence or an older fence and you have to patch or build up to it, quite often the older pickets are not level. What tends to look best, or what I think looks best anyway, is to let your new pickets stay perfectly plumb up and down, and then when you get up next to the old section of fence, you'll have to rip one picket typically at an angle. It'll be sort of like a wedge to fit or fill in that spot. And that's going to happen here, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute.
Three different units for 150. Must not be a framing.
Once the pickets on the right have been taken nearly all the way over, except for the last one, which needs to be cut special at a wedge, there you can see that, then we're going to go ahead and move over to the left-hand side, and we'll finish the pickets over there. On that side too, we'll come all the way to the end except for the last picket, which will probably have to be cut at a slight wedge, and it is. Then it's just a matter of measuring the opening there at the top and at the bottom and cutting it.
2 inches.
We'll just transfer those two measurements to a picket, snap a chalk line to get it straight, and then I like to put one picket on top of another. We'll keep kind of a scrap or a bad picket down below. I'll set the depth of the blade of the saw to just barely pass through the first picket, and then we'll go ahead and cut that out. For the pickets that we get, it's just fine to have them fit very snug because they are at a much higher moisture content than what they're ultimately going to be at. So there will be shrinkage and there'll be gaps after a little while. I like to trim the tops of small pickets in some manner to make them look appropriate, to look like they fit in. And here it's pretty simple. I'm just going to extend a little dog ear cut down and remove that piece, and I think that looks okay. And we just follow the same procedure for the last wedge piece on the other side. And now it is time to cut out our gate. So I'm going to go on the hinge side of the gate. This is where I started with the very first picket that was in the middle. I placed it right at the edge where the gate was going to be, that differentiated the left side, of which was solid, fixed fence, to the right side, which was the opening gate part. And I'm going to go ahead and cut through the rail on the top only. I'll take my hinge and hold it in place so that the barrel of the hinge goes perfectly up and down with the opening of the gate, or the gap between those two pickets. I like to pre-drill a little bit here just so that I don't split the pickets. And then we will install the 1/4 inch lag screw that comes with the gate hardware. You do want to make sure that your hinge is lined up with the rail that's behind the pickets. Okay, once the top hinge is installed and the fence is now re-secured, I go ahead and cut out the bottom portion. Well, I guess my son-in-law is doing that here. We'll cut out the bottom rail and we'll affix a hinge down there next. It's the same procedure here. We'll make sure the barrel of the hinge is perfectly vertical, plumb, which is in line with the gap between those two pickets. Pre-drill and install the lag screws as well. When that one's done, we will cut out the middle rail to completely detach the hinged side of the gate. And now here we have moved over to the right side of the gate. This is where it will open from. And we are going to go ahead and detach the rails that are here. We'll need something like a Sawzall to cut all the way through. We'll cut these all the way through so that we can open the gate. Open it up slowly. Don't put much stress on it because that concrete's wet, okay? Okay, now we'll cut the rest of those off. Here I'm going to cut the back of these rails at a small angle, maybe 5 or 10 degrees, just to provide a little bit of relief so that they don't butt up against that post ever when the gate opens and closes. This just allows for the gate to operate a little bit more smoothly. Here I'm putting in some 2x4 blocking between the post and the pickets. They're going to go below the rails, between the rails and above the rails. This is going to give me a place to make sure that I can screw all of the lag screws from the hinge in. I only put the lag screws from the hinge sort of in the middle region, but they actually stick a little bit above and below. Here it was sticking below, but I had no backer support for the screw, so that's why I put that block in. We're going to do something similar on the other side of the gate, the side where the latch goes. I've got to put a block in above and below that middle rail in order to have a place for me to mount the latch mechanism. And of course, wherever we put blocks, we do need to go through and nail through the pickets into the blocks to make sure they stay in place. This is what's called a through the gate latch, meaning that it can be unlatched from either side of the gate. And we're going to check a little test fit for clearance here. Now when I built this, I did intentionally leave a little bit bigger gap there between the two pickets, but now I'm going to cut out another notch to fit around that latch mechanism as well. It all fits well right now, but sometimes these gates over time will start to sag. So if I increase that gap just a little bit everywhere, then even if there's some sag in the future, the gate will still operate properly. And a jigsaw is about the best tool for this operation. Okay, with that cut, we're going to test it one more time, and the fit looks pretty good. So even if we get some sag in the future, we'll be good. This block here is going to hold the bar that goes inside of the latch for the gate. So we do have to hold that steady from the front, but you don't want to hold it with your hand. And here's that crossbar that goes into the latch mechanism.
Cool.
Just kind of holding it in place and putting one screw in, probably the screw closest to the latch mechanism is best, so that we can fine-tune our adjustment. Now what I want to do is, I can see that it operates just fine right now, but I kind of want to tap this up a little bit to have it at the upper end of the range of operation, because if anything happens to this gate over time, it's going to sag and fall down. So I want to keep it at the uppermost point before I put in that second screw. Okay, and with this one last lag screw, that will complete our build. We're going to do one more test to make sure our gate is fully operational, and it actually looks pretty good. If anybody out there was looking to build a fence or a gate, I hope this was something that you can use. And something tells me we haven't seen the last of the photo bomber. Yep, there she is. Thanks for watching.